Archer's trying to get on.
Montezuma? Jim, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You might want to mute
Who needs to mute?
Montezuma County.
Oh,
Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started because we have a hard stop at 11 if this goes that long. But welcome, everybody. And I think we'll start. I'm Sue Hanson, Montrose County Commissioner, and I think we'll start with some introductions so we know who all is in the room. Commissioner Hanson, would you like to start there?
Yeah,
sure, I'll go ahead and start.
Commissioner Bobby Daniel, Mesa County.
Hi, Bobby. You doing?
I'm Janet Rowland, also from Mesa County.
Rob?
Cody Davis, Mesa
Cody.
County.
Go ahead, Cody.
Sorry, Cody Davis, Mesa County. Thanks, Sue.
I see Montezuma County. Can you unmute and introduce yourselves, please?
Sure, Jim Candelaria, and I'm also here with Commissioner Copenhaver to my left and Commissioner Lindsay to my right.
Okay. Thank you. I see Linda Yellowman.
Dolores County. This is Linda Yellowman, Dolores County.
Dolores County. How are you?
Good.
Good. Great. Amber, I see you.
Good morning, everyone. Amber Swayze, Mesa County.
Amy Tooker.
Amy Tooker, West End.
Robbie LaValle.
Robbie LaValle, Delta County.
Todd.
Good morning, Todd Hollenbeck, Mesa County.
All right, let's see who else I'm seeing here. Cody Perry.
Hi, Cody Perry, Montezuma County.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Good grief. Justin Musser.
Justin Musser, Montrose County Natural Resource Director.
And thank you. And I see it is Teal. I guess, Keith, go ahead, Commissioner Caddy.
Sure. County, Montrose County.
Keith. All right, thanks for joining us. Let's see, we have Jim Ramey.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Jim Ramey. I'm with the Wilderness Society. I live in Grand Junction.
All right, and Scott Braden.
Good morning, Scott Braden, Colorado Wildlands Project, based in Grand Junction.
Okay. Welcome. I think that is everybody. Did I miss anybody?
Dolores County Commissioners.
Oh, Dolores, there you are. Dolores County, go ahead. Did you want to introduce yourselves?
This is Linda. I think they're having problems, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Linda, for letting me know that. So just to sort of tee this up, just wanted to let everybody know that that we requested this meeting so we could get an update from Sean and Amy Tooker and then ask questions, clarifying questions of our natural resources folks and just make sure that everybody understood kind of where we're at this point with the National Monument Project. So, so again, we're tight with just an hour, but we wanted to start with Sean. Did I not see Sean on, Amy?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. Sean, please introduce yourself and then maybe just start and give us an update on what's been happening to date with the halt of the project, and then we could go to Amy.
Sure. My name is Sean Pond. I live in Nucla, Colorado. I'm the lucky guy that started the petition on February 20th to halt the Dolores National Monument. To date, we are about 7,000 signatures in opposition of the National Monument. Most of those are from local stakeholders and residents of Montrose and Mesa County, and a few from outside, even outside the state. We have conducted community outreach meetings in the town of Gateway with about 130-ish in attendance. in Paradox with about 75 in attendance. In the town of Natarita with excess of 300 people in attendance. We have one scheduled this Saturday, March 30th at 10 a.m. in Montrose. Hope to have a good turnout there. We also have one scheduled in Yellow Jacket for our neighbors down in Dolores in Montezuma counties on April 13th, Saturday at 10 a.m. Amy and I have been attending a bunch of commissioners meetings. We've met most of you, and thank you very much for that time and letting us present to you and voice the concerns of the local residents here in the West End and the surrounding area. And Amy, if you want to piggyback off that, I'd welcome that.
Is that okay, Sue?
Yeah, well, you got it.
Okay. So yes, we've been reaching out. The West End had found out a little bit about this last summer, and we had some stakeholder groups. And of course, out of that stakeholder group, none of our questions have been answered, and our concerns have not been answered. On February 16th was the date that the Gateway community found out about this proposed national monument. They are the epicenter of it, and they were the last to be solicited for input. Only because they found out through me. So the stakeholder engagement has not been what it should be. We definitely feel like this is happening to us and not with us. So we have grave concerns. We are assured that grazing and roads will continue to be open, but our concern is that the proposed national monument covers our entire Uravan mineral belt. So that is a clear indication to me of the intent of the monument is to stop all mining and exploration. We believe in clean energy. We believe that we should not be giving Russia $800 million a year for their uranium. Our regulations here in the state and federal are awesome, and I know that Russia is not doing such a good job of worker and environment protections. So every time that uranium market goes up a little bit, our faces get shoved down into the dirt a little bit more every time with these special interest groups, and we're frankly tired. Clean energy, nuclear power, that is something that our nation needs and the world needs. And to take out a critical mineral resource like the Uravan mineral belt off the table and off of that and turn us into a single recreation industry, we're not okay with that. So we want to mine, we want to explore, and we want to mine critical minerals for our nation. Energy independence. Thank you.
All right. Anybody have any, Amber, let me turn that to you now. No comments?
I don't have anything to add at this point. I would let my commissioner speak for Mesa County.
Okay, great. So do we have any specific questions of Sean and or Amy that you'd like to have clarified? Just so the idea here is to be fully informed of what's happening and potentially what we can do about it, but mostly just for information today. I guess I'll tee it up with some questions for Amy and Sean. Have you reached out to the Colorado Wildlands folks to see sort of have a conversation with them, and how has that gone, or did you make any headway with that conversation about changing the boundaries or having some kind of reasonable discussion about that?
So when we received the map in January and then the new map in March, it's the exact same. So all of our concerns have not even remotely been addressed. We have not gotten the answers about the grazing and things like that we've asked. So the map has not changed. We've asked for that map to change. Obviously, it's not the smallest area compatible with the object identified, which is the Dolores River. And so that's a clear indication to me that they're not willing to start working on that map and getting that map condensed down to the river. So that's our concern. We have had conversations over the winter, not necessarily with Scott Braden, but with Mason Osgood, with Sheep Mountain Alliance. But our last meeting on February 14th with Mason Osgood and Amber Clark did not go well. I tried to walk it back to an NCA, and I was told that that ship has sailed. And so I mean, we're just at this point is we do not want a monument. We do not want a monument that looks like that covers our entire Year-Round mineral belt. So yes, we reached out and none of our concerns have been addressed. And this is just the point that we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, Scott, I can put you on the spot. Do you want to respond to that just so we can be clear on what's happening completely?
Sure, Commissioner Hanson, and as you know, I think I've become a fan of being put on the spot of late. And I also have you know that Amy and I did go out to lunch, and I did offer to pay. So make sure I follow up with you on that. You know, we are a coalition of nonprofit organizations who have proposed a monument as a means of conserving objects or values in the Dolores River Canyon country. You know, we see this as a way to expeditiously protect public lands that have been, we've sought as conservationists for over 50 years to protect. You know, we categorically disagree with some of the allegations that, you know, Amy and others have brought. You know, we do not believe this would stop all mining or close the Year-Round mineral belt. We've sought to limit and exclude the majority of active mining claims to the extent practical, to the point where I can say that 85% of the active claims within the Dolores watershed are excluded from the monument and NCA proposals. I would also maybe note that the objects or values that we're seeking to protect are found throughout the landscape that we're proposing. You know, it is not correct that it is just the river and the riparian zone that we're attempting to conserve. It is a broader set of values that include, you know, the Mesozoic geology, paleontological resources, indigenous cultural sites, human history, primarily things from successive mining booms over the 19th and 20th century, wildlife habitat, etc. And maybe finally, I would say that, you know, we still see this as a dialogue and a conversation. It is correct, we have not updated the map in the last month, but I completely expect that there's more process, there's more public input, and there's going to be more negotiation as time moves forward, and that we're open to that. I would say that as conservation groups, and I'll try to wrap up here because I know we don't have much time, we're skeptical of the approach of the NCA as a way and as a means of conserving these lands in Mesa and Montrose County, just because we feel like that's been tried and has failed in both places. So, you know, I would say we're skeptical of that approach as a means to getting this done at this point. So I think I'll just pause there. And yeah, thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody, any questions for Scott or?
Hi, Sue, this is Sean. I think I would just add to that, the original question was, with proposed of Amy is how talk's been. And I just want to point out the fact that I have not spoke to any of you. You've actually avoided me at all costs. There's been meetings that have been turned down because the ranchers or the stakeholders asked for me to be present, and I'm not sure I understand that approach. We are in fact a very civil people down here that just want to talk to you about our concerns. And again, I find it ironic that the map does include the entire Year-Round mineral belt, and the statement that it excludes 92%, or whatever that number was, of active mining claims does not preclude from the fact that it would exclude all future mining claims. And with the current price of uranium on the rise, those future mining claims is exactly what would provide much needed income and jobs to the hardworking people of the West End.
John, I have a question. Maybe this is a John Whitney or maybe Amber, but wouldn't the details of the uses come down to the resource management plan, and that's kind of where the discussion of what can happen where? Because Scott Braden, just to push back a bit, is that when you say that I believe, or you said I think that the uses are going to be, they'll still be grazing, they'll still be mining, but those things are available or will be available until it's written down and discussed. I guess I'm not sure that I would trust that. So that's what makes me a little worried about the language that would be in the National Monument proposal. So can somebody answer that for me? Maybe one of you natural resource people?
So from what we've researched, it would depend on the language in the proclamation. To my knowledge, those discussions haven't started, so we don't have anything to go on at this point, but it would be dependent on what's in that proclamation.
Thank you.
Sue, I don't know if you can see on your end, but both Justin and Keith have their hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see it, yes. Keith, Commissioner Caddy, go ahead and go first.
Yeah, this question's for Amy or Sean. With 7,000 signatures, have you relayed this information to Senators Bennett's, Hickenlooper's office, and Bobert's office about this and the information you have, and the constituents that are against this? What has their office said to you?
Yes, so, Whitney and Naomi from, Bobert's office were both at the Montezuma meeting on Tuesday, and they're both very aware of the number of signatures that we have. I believe Sarah is also, I'm sure I mentioned that at the Western Small Miners meeting, last week. No, they believe in the polls. They believe in that 750 people and 72% of them saying that they want this monument. And so no, our signatures override even remotely that argument. And the support that they have is not even remotely close to the support that we have opposing this monument. So yes, everybody is aware of the petition and the amount that we have, and it continues to grow hundreds by the day.
I would assume it would grow quite a bit when you get into the Montrose meeting on Saturday also.
Is it?
Are you done, Commissioner Caddy? Okay, Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for Scott. My video didn't start, I apologize. Yeah, so Scott, you're talking about some of the resources that you're concerned about in this area, and I was hoping you could kind of highlight what you think the major threats are to those resources and how the National Monument is going to put protections in place that actually achieve what you're hoping to.
Well, thanks for that, Justin. And before I answer that, I would also note that, we have petitions too. We have 14,000 signatures in support of the National Monument. So we can compare petitions. I don't know if that tells us much that's useful. I think there's under 2,000 people in the West End. So obviously both of our petitions have a larger geography of appeal. Justin, to your question, I think that the main threats that I see to this landscape are sort of increased use over time. I mean, we're already seeing that. COVID put a ton of pressure on our public lands, and visitation is increasing. Recreational demand will continue to increase. So getting the conservation right so that we can make sustainable choices around recreation and visitation is compelling to us. We've talked a lot about mining as a potential thing we want to not harm, but I also think it's a two-edged sword. There's a threat of potential mining in the wrong places. Mining that harms the special resources or values that I articulated earlier, mining in places where I think a lot of us could reasonably agree maybe it doesn't belong. We'd like to, that is a threat. And in a high uranium price environment, you start to see exploration in some of the wildlands and some of the places you wouldn't maybe want to see that. I think development projects of the kinds that you may have a hard time anticipating in the future worry us. So like my example here is in Uniweep Canyon, we saw Excel propose a pumped hydro scheme that would have been incredibly damaging to that landscape. And then finally, just sort of like habitat fragmentation, whether it be from like development of pipelines, power lines, just the slow accretion of impacts to lands over time, we see as the main threats that we're trying to protect this exceptionally important landscape from. So thanks, Justin.
It does seem like there's other mechanisms to do this without going with this full-blown national monument direction. I did want to make another comment too. There was a commissioner from another county actually made a comment yesterday about this about the NCA process in the Dolores area and Montrose County's engagement in that. And I think that's being misconstrued to a pretty large degree. Montrose County was engaged collaboratively in that project for years. And when there was some turnover in some of these other counties of representatives, that collaborative process really eroded pretty quickly. And Montrose County at that point pulled out because it was not a good use of their time anymore. And truthfully, after that eroded, the outcome wasn't as good as it would have been if they would have just stayed the course. From the get-go, I think too, to start with those discussions from the standpoint that you guys need to get on board with this NCA or you're going to get a much worse, much more restrictive management plan imposed on you. I think to hold these communities hostage with that kind of action isn't the right way to approach these types of things. And again, with this kind of staying in that same vein with collaboration, Sheep Mountain Alliance was mentioned earlier in this discussion too. And I guess my experience with those folks is they have a proven track record of not being interested in collaborative work. And when they're even involved in collaborative processes, if it doesn't go the way that they want, they go a different direction. And they're completely content ignoring scientific studies and driving a narrative that is frankly untrue. And I think that regardless of whether we're talking about this process or other collaborative work or other proposals in these types of areas, I think working with folks like Amy and those local people that really have a vested interest in these landscapes is absolutely critical. And I would commend you too, Scott, for coming down and having a discussion with me earlier in this process too. I do appreciate that. So thank you.
Robbie LaValle, please.
Hi, everybody. This is Wendell Koontz. I'm Delta County Commissioner sitting in Robbie's office. Justin, you said that very well. That was a hard thing to get out there and do it appropriately. Questions for Scott. I got two of them. Scott, in regards to the mining, we all know that the land use regulations for mining, local, state, and federal, are very strict and are a temporary use of the land. There's a bond put in place for all of that. So while you think that is a bad use of the land, we all know that that land is rehabilitated for future use too. My concern is your recreation statement. If there is a national monument, we all know that that designation brings in a higher and more varied use of recreation that does not have any real boundaries to it. There's no bonding. We've all seen what's happened at Hanging Lake and Obi Joyful and Conundrum Hot Springs and other places that are now permitted only for access because of the overuse. If there's a national monument designation here, will we see similar overuse and resource degradation?
Thanks, Commissioner. And we'll probably end up not seeing this the same way, I predict, but all those places that you mentioned are not national monuments, and they have become incredibly busy. This area is becoming busier with time. I hear from stakeholders, in Gateway, and by the way, I started communicating with Gateway Resorts. I just looked on my calendar in June of last year, so not nobody there. Hearing anecdotes of trash and, more, problems with dispersed camping, I argue that pressure is already there and the visitation is already there. And so we ought to do what we can to make sure that the landscape is adequately conserved for conservation and that we're making smart choices about recreation as time moves forward. And I would also suggest that there's analogs throughout the West of other BLM managed national monuments. So I'm not talking about Colorado National Monument. I'm not talking about, something in an urban environment managed by the Park Service with all of the Park Service rules. But there are other rural BLM managed national monuments that largely do fly under the radar while having these extra management provisions to protect against overuse. And I would point to like Canyons of the Ancients down there in Montezuma County, and a handful of others across the West, Rio Grande del Norte, and Oregon Mountain Desert Peaks in New Mexico, or potentially other examples like that.
I still don't understand what a monument designation is going to do that good land use, implementing good land use rules that we already have. Whoa.
Amy, go ahead.
Well, I just want to point out that there was only 2,631 signatures on their petition as of December 11th. It didn't get to this point until it kind of blew up in February. I would also like to say that COVID did destroy our rivers. We had a lot of people come and escape from Telluride and San Miguel County, and they destroyed it. We are not seeing the visitors up on the park. Any visitors that we have are along the river. And it's only when the river runs. And right now it's, mountain bikers, it's jeepers. We've got our Rimrocker Trail and our Shamrock Trail, and people are visiting those places. But there's already protections in place through the BLM offices. And we need to make sure that that those things are, are being used effectively. Any improvements, parking or vault toilets along the river, absolutely, that would be wonderful. And that's going to help the river more than anything at this point. So when you turn a big green open sign above the Dolores River, that's not protection, that's exploitation. And I think that our BLM office and I think our community and we can come up with plans, and we've been doing this. We don't need help with the monument. We've been doing just fine with our transition and our coal transition. This just came in and hindered all of our progresses. We are a Tier 1 coal-affected community, and the state of Colorado has committed to empowering our community with the resources to transition how we want to. And this monument is completely stopping all of those processes. So, no, I'm not okay with this monument the way that it stands. I'm not okay with trying to transfer our coal-affected jobs, our mining jobs that were so awesome, to some uranium and vanadium mining jobs. I don't want service industry jobs, and I don't want my community just to be a recreation hub. We want to have a diversified economy. We've been working on it for the last 10 years, and we deserve to have those processes seen through.
You've already experienced a community that has focused on one source, so you know how vulnerable you can be. I see Amber, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had a question, maybe Scott can answer, that came up. Mesa County has U.S. atomic energy reserves that is included in the mapping. If there's a mineral withdrawal for the entire monument, is that included in that withdrawal?
It's a great question. So as a baseline, any valid existing rights within a monument would be grandfathered in. So if there's an active mining claim, if there's a uranium leasing program parcel, which is what I think you're talking about, managed by the DOE. Those are existing uses that would be grandfathered in. The question specifically about those atomic energy reserve, I think you and I should follow up with that offline. I've talked to the DOE, and I think that might be a mapping relic from an older that hasn't been true since the 70s.
Okay, thank you.
Bobby, did you have a question? Oh, maybe I was losing. Okay. I guess, any other questions before I, pontificate on something? Anybody else have any questions? Where do we go from here, I guess? Scott, you're kind of leading this charge. I guess maybe before you answer that, I wonder if someone from Senator Bennett's office or Hickenlooper's office could enlighten us as to where the NCA is in the legislative process right now and what's holding that up. If you can share that. Which one of you brave souls?
Sue John Whitney here. Can you hear me okay?
You can join us.
Thanks. The NCA process, quick abbreviated history there, 13, 14 years of work, got a great product there in the 3 southern counties. I think everyone down there is really proud of that NCA that we came together to find a good middle ground on. And we are working to move it forward in the Senate along with our partner, Senator Hickenlooper. We have now got the bill passed out of the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee on a unanimous vote, which is great to see. The committee spent a lot of time vetting that bill, dug into it, all the issues, including uranium, which has been talked about a lot on this call. They worked with folks from the uranium industry that had contacted them with concerns. They spent a lot of time preparing background reports, diving into that issue, taking testimony, of course, at the formal hearing that had happened earlier in the process. And, when it was all said and done, we were proud to see that the committee agreed with us on the ground here that it was a good product, and they moved it forward with a unanimous voice vote, including the support of the ranking Republican on the committee, Senator John Barrasso. So we're hopeful now that it has passed the Senate committee that there will be a path forward this Congress that mostly will look like the possibility of a public lands package coming together this Congress, which we are hopeful that might happen. If it does, it will probably be towards the latter part of this year. That's traditionally when public lands packages come together, and that's just the way public land bills tend to pass these days is big packages that are negotiated between the Senate and House committees on natural resources, and they pull together a package of anywhere from 10 to 40 bills that will move collectively across the House and Senate floor and pass into law. So we're hopeful that'll happen. So hoping there's a path forward for the NCA.
A clarifying question about that. Someone explained to me that there was some issue with the mineral. I mean, does it specifically talk about uranium, or does it talk about mineral as a broader category?
The NCA legislation you're asking to?
Yes, I'm sorry, the NCA.
Uranium was an issue, of course, from the get-go in that discussion, and with folks on different perspectives on that. But I think on the committee there was that we worked with on the bill, there was folks that were very strongly pro-uranium, and others that were a little more skeptical of increased uranium development. So that was worked out, and where we landed was really a thoughtful drawing of the boundaries in a way that worked for both sides of the table. The DOE uranium lease tracts are essentially grandfathered in to allow, future production on those areas to continue. And then the boundaries were drawn in a way that many of the uranium resources on the higher up mesas outside of the river canyon were excluded. But there was give and take on that, and there's probably some areas included in the NCA that could potentially have some uranium. But I think at the end of the day, the 3 counties down south, the NGOs, Al Heaton, the rancher we worked with, who's a former uranium miner and brought great expertise and knowledge from the ground on this issue. I think we all thought it was a good compromise that everyone could agree to.
And I have another follow-up question about, reflecting on what Scott Graydon said about, that he sees this national monument concocted a very different animal than others. And have you seen in a national monument we are able to designate specifically what is, I mean, with this kind of flexibility, are you, it's, I am suspicious that that's the case because it seems like there's always a sort of a what's intended, but what ends up happening is not necessarily the same thing. Is there flexibility in a national monument proposal?
Well, I would say there is. I mean, I've worked on several national monuments over the course of my career, and I'll cite just two examples on that. One at Browns Canyon, as there was an effort by the community there to make a national monument. We heard concerns from the grazers there. We went in and met with them. Senator Bennett sat down with them, as did then Senator Udall. We also brought in the senior folks from the Forest Service and BLM to that meeting. We heard out those concerns, and we worked to make sure there was language in the proclamation that established the national monument that would guarantee that grazing could continue, and it does there to this day. The language, was included in the proclamation. I haven't heard any complaints or problems since. I've actually taken the opportunity to talk several times to the county commissioners there, and they've let me know that, the grazing does continue there as before it was a national monument. The other example I'll cite for flexibility, the most recent monument done in Colorado was at Camp Hale, and I know there was a lot of folks that were concerned there that the monument would not allow forestry projects to move forward or would allow motorized use to move forward. But in both cases there at Camp Hale, those uses continue. There's actually been a significant forestry project approved at Camp Hale that is allowing some forest restoration right outside of the town of Frisco within the boundaries of the monument that has long been sought by that community. And what the community there and the Forest Service told me is the increased stature of that area being a national monument actually helped them compete for those competitive funds within the Forest Service process. And they've now got multi-million-dollar project underway there to do some forest restoration. And then at Camp Hale itself, right in the middle of Camp Hale, for those who have been there, is a company called Nova Guides that makes their living with ATVs in the summer, snowmobiles in the winter, and they were consulted on the monument, and they ended up supporting the monument because they were given assurances that those uses can continue, and indeed they do. Now that a monument has been established, those uses are continuing. So really what it comes down to, Sue, is it depends on what the final language is in any proclamation or piece of legislation that establishes a public land designation as to what uses are allowed or not allowed.
Right. So
the other example I'll cite is Canyon of the Ancients, where they've actually they're moving forward with oil and gas and carbon dioxide production there because that too was included in that proclamation. So very good degree of flexibility.
In your experience in bringing people together, it seems to me like please listening to, instead of you don't join an NCA, so guess what? You get a national monument, which is kind of what it feels like now. Kind of takes away the ability for people in those areas to protect the land themselves. And when you look at any of the maps, there's a wilderness area. There's a lot of protection in that area, and Scott Braden's group has already proposed a whole bunch more protection in that area without regard of the national monument. So there is a lot. There's eyeballs on that area. Don't you think, in your experience, it would be advantageous to listen to what the West End is concerned about and seriously consider if it's truly as flexible as you're indicating, John? It seems to me that we could do a lot of work by sitting down and really, hammering this out and listening to each other in a way that is respective of each other's viewpoint. And then as I think somebody alluded to, if we're going to hit up these clean energy targets, which is a whole nother Zoom call, there has to be energy exploration somewhere. And so I think shutting down what it looks like, taking the whole Uravan mineral belt, and not even just, clean energy, we're talking about phones and all sorts of technology, it just seems like a better way to do this is to honor the community of the West End and really sit down in a way that you hear them. So, and I think I have a here, so.
Well, I'm happy to respond to that, Sue, or if you need to move on, that's fine. And I just got back to my desk, so happy to turn on my camera and engage. I was driving a little earlier. Apologies for that.
No worries. Okay, I think there was a hand up. Yeah, Teal.
Hi there. I apologize. My internet connection is a little unstable, so I missed the introductions. My name is Teal, and I live in Durango, Colorado, but I venture up into this area a lot, so that's why I'm attending this meeting. I just wanted to mention that I think there are members of this coalition who are working towards this monument who are a little bit afraid of engaging with some of the folks who are in the opposition because they have openly harassed some folks online. And I do think that it's important for this dialogue to stay open and civil. And I think it's really difficult to state that you're open to having a dialogue while on the internet actively doxing folks who are part of our coalition, which is really scary for those people. And I think it's really important that we keep the conversation civil, and that's not necessarily the conversation that's happening online right now.
Thank you. I think that speaks to when you don't engage the public in the way that the West End could have been engaged, you sort of that sort of set the tone, and I would guess that's where that comes from. Amy, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, that's it too, is this community has already gone through a transition, and that was super emotional. And so for this group to come in and say, this is what you're going to get, because Montrose County walked away from the NCA table, and all of our plans that we've been working on so hard for the last 10 years are about to be stopped with a monument. And it wasn't even, this has been going on for a good, year and a half, 2 years, and this community has not been engaged. This community has not been asked for input. They haven't been invited to the table. So yes, there is major emotions going on, and when there's misinformation going out there, we are throwing out facts and data. And when there's misinformation coming from the supporters of the monument saying, oh, no, yeah, it's how I feel about it is the bullies have now said that they're the victims, and that's not, the whole thing is reversed. We were not engaged from the very beginning. They went to Boulder, they went to Thornton, they went to Fort Collins to garner support first. And that map and that proposal should have been brought to the communities first, the West End and Gateway. And this could have been hashed out in the very beginning, but we were last. And so, yes, we are super upset about that.
Okay, John, I'm going to give you, go ahead. Thank you, Amy. John, you're on mute, or you?
Oh, sorry. There we go. Double muted there. Circling back to your question earlier, Sue, I mean, as far as the dialogue and the process, I mean, that's really the mode the Senate offices are in right now. We've obviously heard, people have concerns on the West End with this proposal, and we recognize people feel strongly on both sides. There's obviously an incredible amount of support for this national monument proposal, but there's also a large amount of concern and opposition as well. And I think what we're doing in the Senate offices right now is just taking the time to get out and listen to folks on the community, make sure we're hearing from all the main voices out there, and before we make any decisions or recommendations to our respective senators that we work for. The one thing I did just want to add is I have been troubled by some of the lack of stability in this conversation. I've had a number of complaints from constituents who have sent me screenshots of some of the comments or threats that have been made on social media, and I just want to, take the time to say, I think it would behoove us all if we could encourage just a cooling down of the temperature on this. I recognize, people on all sides feel strongly about this. That's appropriate. Public lands are near and dear to everyone's hearts for different reasons, and people feel very strongly about the Dolores. It's a magnificent landscape. And so we certainly understand that, but, we just want to strike that call for stability and just say that, we're willing to meet with and work with and listen to anyone, but we do just ask anyone that we are having conversations and working with, just remembers that even though we feel strongly that we've got to encourage everyone we know to just keep this conversation within the limits of acceptable civility and decorum in a democracy.
So I am going to final call for questions, comments. John, I couldn't agree more. I think that means everybody needs to sit down and hammer this out. I pretty much got insulted at a meeting yesterday about, well, if Montrose hadn't turned down the NCA, then none of this would be happening. And I have a problem with that too. So I think that, maybe this has been somewhat productive. It's been educational for me. Maybe we can do something like this again. And I would encourage, it's the West End is not like going into Aspen and doing something. I mean, this is a community that's kind of falling back to some economic help here. So this is just another thing that detracts from all the work we're doing in terms of community building and economic development and all the things that we've been engaged in with the leaders of the community. And it's just another thing to have to deal with. And it's big because it takes a traditional and historic mining, generations of mining families, and with the hopes that this might be feasible or possible in the future, and it kind of just stomps that into the ground. And despite that Scott says, oh no, we can do all this, it's hard to believe that, because with the current climate on what you keep hearing about with energy and with necessary minerals, it seems a little disingenuous now to do exploration in our own backyard. So here you have a community that's growing, and I see Sarah wants to say something, but I'm not trying to. I feel like there has to be an opportunity to sit down. There seems to be a big gulf even in between whether it's Montrose and the NCA. Just because a county doesn't want to have special designation to limit our community should not be in grounds for punishment, and that's what it feels very much like. Sarah.
Hey, Sarah here from Senator Hickenlooper's office. I know my colleague Lisa Poole is in the room there in Montezuma County. Thanks for having us. I want to echo what John said, that the Senate offices are really in this point of listening and showing up. And I just want to encourage, if you have constituents, leaders in the communities in either county, please encourage them to reach out to our Senate offices. We're more than happy to talk. It's really helpful when we can sit down and look at maps and truly understand what are the concerns around trails. I mean, we've done a lot of listening sessions already with the Western Miners Association, with grazers and Gateway, with town managers and clerks, with community leaders. And it's really, I think the most productive conversations have been those sitting down and really talking about, here's the issue with this boundary and here's why we have this concern. So really want to encourage the continuation of that as this conversation develops.
Saying that, and we're always hopeful that the listening goes both ways. It doesn't always seem that way, but hopefully that's the case. I'll turn it open to anybody who has final words. Questions? Okay, John?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. I guess I would direct it Mr. Whitney or Scott Braden or both. But if in fact nothing is going to change with the monument designation, as we keep hearing over and over, then why in fact do we need a national monument designation?
I'll take that. I don't think I've said that nothing would change. I think I have said that a lot of the uses that we see on that landscape would continue, but with adaptation, because a monument lifts up and creates a new management plan around conserving a set of values. So it's not that there would be no change. It means that the management would shift to protect those special values. And yes, there are wilderness study areas, ACECs, and other administrative protections on the ground now, but those are both impermanent and there's huge gaps between them. So we think a monument is a way to more systematically align management around those things in a way that will allow what is so special about this landscape. It's important to the people in the local communities, but it's also important to people in my community in Grand Junction and across the Western Slope, and in fact is a nationally significant public lands landscape, to make sure that those values are sustainable and preserved for the long haul. And I think it's not necessarily a choice between mining or no mining, or, I think we can have both things, but a monument will make sure that those values endure in perpetuity.
Last call. Okay, Amber.
I know we're short on time, but I haven't been in a meeting with Dolores County or Montezuma County, and I'm just wondering if they can share their experience with Canyons of the Ancient and what that might have looked like with travel management changes or anything on the ground that they saw that might be helpful for this process.
They might be having some audio. I understand.
What do you want to do?
That's okay.
I did hear some things about Canyon of the Ancients, about what was originally promised, but that didn't happen, and I need to find out some more facts about that. So I did hear some things about that yesterday, and would probably delve into that and figure that out. So I'll be in touch with you later. All of you uninvited people that found your way on here, I'm really glad you did. I appreciate the conversation and the information, and John, maybe this doesn't suffice for our call and our phone tag, but maybe we can make that happen at some point. Anybody else? I thank you all for your time. Let me know if this is something that would be helpful in the future. Amy, you have something to say? Okay, you can squeeze it in.
I do, yeah. So Mr. Kopenhofer had mentioned the other day that in the management plan, it got changed after the proclamation and after everything, because the mountain bikers wanted a trail. So they changed the management plan later on so that the mountain bikers had a trail. And also, as far as the grazing, I've got stacks of incidences where a cow has stepped on an arrowhead. And so now that the BLM and Forest Service are getting sued for things like that. And then this other one that came out last week was the grazing allotment. The BLM and the Forest Service are being sued for a bird and a fish. And so they don't want the cows in there grazing because of a bird that can fly and a fish that can swim. And who's paying for those lawsuits? It's going to be us as taxpayers paying for those frivolous lawsuits that are just ridiculous. And the ultimate goal is to get these ranchers out of business and to reduce their allotments to nothing. So to say that grazing is not going to change, it absolutely will change, because this is going to just open up a whole nother ball game of overreach to our ranchers. The BLM is going to get sued to a point where it's millions of dollars of litigation, and they're going to say, well, the rancher is only bringing in this much money for the ranching and the cows, and we're getting sued for millions of dollars. I guess we just need to kick the ranchers off the land so we don't have to pay for the litigation. And so I've got a stack of those here. And so to say things aren't going to change, they will change. And I'm here to protect my values in my community, my ranching, my mining. The historical values are already protected. They're already being taken care of. They are not accessible to the river. They are accessible by county roads and state highways. So the historical places that they want to protect, there's already protections. We don't need any help with that.
I do think that our time would be better spent than suing our BLM than having BLM be able to do some work on landscape. Montezuma.
Dang it. Lower hand. Sorry.
Thank you, Dave.
So thank you, Sue. I'll elaborate just a little bit here of our meeting that we had the other day and the work that has been done in the last 14 years. And again, I'm a latecomer to this, but Commissioner Kopenhaver to my right or to my left is not. There has been a lot of work done for us in the NCA. I think that has been displayed. Has everybody agreed on everything? Absolutely not. But I think at the end of the day, we are, we're content. I guess we're okay with the way it's going to work out, and we think it's the best path forward at this point in time, and specifically for our water. And again, I keep looking to my left because the guy to my left has way more water knowledge than I ever even thought of having. But in a nutshell, 14 years is a long time, and I think it's the best path forward for us at this point in time in this county, along with Dolores County and San Miguel County. I don't see them on here, but I'll let Commissioner Cook or Garcher or can't see her name, respond to that. But with that, Commissioner Culpepper, go ahead.
I think basically what you guys are facing right now is what we were looking at in 2008. We were not happy with the monument that we had here in Montezuma County already. And so that's why we started seeking an alternative to do something else. And we started working on that at that point in time to not only to prevent another monument from being here, but also to take the wild and scenic off of that river. We reached a lot of agreements. It was a give and take process over all of these years, basically. It's been a long process. But we feel like we've got a better opportunity to have something we can live with in the future and keep care of our community with this than we could with a monument. And that's why we started working on it.
We have a hard stop here. I have to run to another meeting, but we appreciate you joining us, and we know that you support the NCA, and you're well on the way with that process. So just wanted you to be aware of what's going on, and so everybody's, it's all in our area, so we just want to make sure that we're sharing the information. I want to thank everybody for being here. Appreciate it. Hope we all learned something, and hope we can move forward with some positive plans and start listening to each other. So thank you all for being here. Take care.
Thank you.
They should have stayed in the process.